the journey's not always been easy. And
No, it's not.
walk us through personally I would say one of the, if not the biggest struggle challenge that you've had with your precious wife.
Yeah, so Marquita had two beautiful children, raised them up. In 2017, we learned she had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And you just Google that and the death rate is incredibly high. And so we went to get her the best possible care, and she survived for a year. And in 2018, she went to be with our Lord, and she is in a much, much, much better place and in a wonderful place. But that was a tough struggle, right? The kids were coming of age. They were. One was in college. The other one had just was graduating from college. They both got married in the middle of all that, and so there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of change for me in 2017, 2018. That changed me fundamentally to think about. I was always a hard charger and a driver, and I've got control of this, and I knew the Lord's the one that had control of it. But I went from I really started to understand. No, I do not have control over these things, and I need to really put my faith in God, and I need to lean harder and harder and harder. And that process, going through that process, taught me a lot about myself and taught me a lot about how I can be a better leader at work, and as well as be a leader of my family.
Well, I watched you go through that and had the honor to observe and walk with you. I was amazed at how selfless you instantly became. You totally decided, you said she survived a year, but you were a caregiver for a year.
Yes.
Talk a bit about that.
Well, the first thing that I met with the doctor, and he said, look, you're an engineer. I want you to engineer this. Go do all the research on it. So my son, who's an engineer, my daughter, we all dove in and started doing research. And I was in just like going back to when I was at NASA many years later, started there. I was diving into all the journals, all the research publications. I said, let me have access to the same things the doctor have access to, not just Google searches, but really real technical journals. And what's a path forward? Understanding genetically what was happening, who's the best in the world at this. We sought out that best in the world help. We took her to Johns Hopkins as one example. We also took her up to an offshoot of Vandy in Nashville for some experimental treatments, and we tried several avenues. So I would focus on the treatment part, what could we bring to her, and then helping her emotionally through that, right?
Wow.
Because that journey was really hard, coming to grips with the fact that you have a cancer and, you're not going to get to see your grandchildren, not very likely you won't get to. And she didn't. And what does that mean? And she was always a woman of very strong faith who helped me with my faith. And so walking that through with her and being there to support her emotionally towards the end, last few months, a lot of physical support needed there too, while trying to get her the best care. I poured and by the way, still working. And work became kind of my refuge just to have a break, right? I came to later have to deal with that too.
Well, Steve, we talk about crossing the line, the name of this podcast.
Yes.
And we talk about above the line being, that's where our people skills are and where we get alignment, and then below the line our task. You are a below the line guy. You're that, in our vernacular, if you're familiar, you're that lion, camel kind of guy that lives and enjoys and works below the line.
Right.
But you made an intentional choice with your wife, Marquita, to go above the line and be there for her emotionally.
Absolutely.
You were still below the line researching and working and doing whatever you could do, but you made it an intentional effort to say, I've got to meet her emotional needs. You just articulated. What was that like, and how did you make that decision? How did you know to do that?
Because for the previous 8 years, honestly, I had been working with you, and you had helped me come to understand what above the line and below the line means. And I had started applying those things in life. I was I'm an ENTJ also, right? So, which the nickname for that is a field marshal. And I was proud of that. I was proud that, Patton is my favorite general, and drive. Okay, and I come to realize that you can have drive, but you also need to make sure you're caring for the people, right?
Yeah.
And so that journey had started, probably 8 years before. And I was like, now I have an opportunity to really walk that in my personal life at another level that I'd never even thought about doing, right? And we can't just be task oriented here. We have to. So it was actually a very natural transition, because it was something that actually, in case where I'd started practicing it more in my work life, and then brought that back into my personal life. And then those personal experiences now have shaped me going forward as a leader into the future.
You know, what a beautiful example of servant leadership. And I think about your children who watched how you dealt with this crisis and the takeaways that they have, that your legacy and Marquita's legacy, and how she was so beautiful walking through this, and her faith so strong. That boy, you were doing more than just caring for your wife. You were teaching your children about life, just like you learned things growing up. This was an incredible, difficult, horrific, but really beautiful life lesson.
It was, and then we come to the end, and we were all gathered around, and we said a prayer, and she breathed her last, and we were all there with her. And there was sadness in losing her, but there was more joy than sadness because where she went. And that she had lived a life, and she left a legacy. And then how she left her legacy. She imparted some things to my children that were important, and one of the things was, hey, your dad needs to be able to make decisions and explore and date and marry again. He's a young person.
She said that to your children.
She literally told, particularly my daughter, that. And I didn't know that until later. And so when my children encouraged me, Dad, I think it'd be great for you to start dating, and you need somebody. And I said, yes, I do. And then I met this beautiful love of my life, Tanya, 3.5 years ago, and we've had a wonderful relationship there. And so there's been a new wonderful chapter has opened, and now I've just expanded my family to have 3 wonderful stepchildren, and my children, and now a couple of grandkids, and this life is blessed.
Wow. And so you meet Tanya, and with a freedom to date, with a freedom to allow the right person to come in, because really Marquita set all that up.
She did.
And not that there are not bumps and challenges with children, there always are.
Yes.
I'm just saying she allowed that. That's what a legacy she left.
That was an incredible selfless legacy she left.
What a great selfless legacy. Well said.
Because the opposite, not saying anything, or the opposite, and I've learned that is the case in many cases, makes it very hard.
That's right.
With the future.
And you met Tanya, and now you guys have been married.
We've been married for 2.5 years.
Beautiful, beautiful bride, and still in your honeymoon, and able to celebrate each other's life, and
absolutely
kind of blend, if I can use that word, your lives together.
I'm learning what a blended family is.
Yeah.
And each and every day, it's a new opportunity and a new journey, and it's just an incredible blessing.
So that personally helped shape you as a leader. How have you taken some of the lessons you've learned there? Now you're the president of the Dynetics Leidos company. Is that right? I get that right?
That's right.
And so you lead how many people?
4,000.
All right, 4,000 people. How do you take those lessons that you've learned, and how are you applying it to that position today as president?
So if we think about what's happened, we were purchased by Leidos a little over 2 years ago, and that was an incredible opportunity for our employee owners at Dynetics, right? Incredible event for them and their families.
Right.
And then we went right into COVID. I mean, within weeks, went right into COVID. And now we're a part of this much larger corporation. What does that mean? And what that meant was I needed to rely far more on above the line than below the line. There's plenty of below the line that needed to happen, but our folks are feeling uncertain. They're in this new company. What is this really going to be about? What's my future going to happen? COVID, every day was a new journey there, right? What's going to happen, particularly for that first year? And so spending much more time above the line in that, walking that walk with Dave King, very good mentor and friend, and my boss there at the time, and who then set me up later on a few months ago to take over the helm of Dynetics. So it's really been about moving myself to spend most of my time above the line, and knowing that I can always go below the line really easily. Right? When I need to dive down on the details, I can do that.
Right.
But I need to spend more time above the line, and so all of those experiences in the personal life, which forced me to spend more time above the line, then now have driven into my work life, which is spending more time with my employees. I started doing more management by walking around time, getting to know people on the shop floor, getting to walk to all of our locations across the United States, getting to know those folks. What's their journeys? What's going on in their life? What makes them a part of this? And getting really excited about getting I get more energy now, Larry, of when I get to spend time just with the employees and our wonderful workforce all around the U.S. And again, the journey they're on. That's where I now get my energy from a work perspective. It's not about I just accomplished this new scramjet or I just accomplished this new hypersonic system. That's all great, and that's what I used to get excited about.
Wow.
Now I'm far more excited about watching the team mature and grow, and particularly watching our leaders mature and grow.
Boy, I love it, Steve Cook. So tell me this. There are many people who are Steve Cooks in terms of they get energy from below the line. They are engineers. They're technically driven men and women. And they know they need to be above the line. And look, we've got to lead above the line. But they have no idea how to do that. And they don't understand really what it takes to get above the line and maybe the cost of what it takes, especially in the beginning. What did you do? And I watched you grow in this area so much with being intentional.
Yes.
But what did you do to grow that muscle so that you could lead above the line?
So I think you just said it. You have to be, number one, you have to be intentional. You have to practice it, right? If it's and using whatever method is good for you, whether that's a sticky note on your mirror in the morning, or whether that's a note in your book, or a reminder, whatever works for you.
That's so good.
Make it intentional. Decide today, what intentional things am I going to do to be above the line and carrying and being a part of my employees or my team, whatever you're involved with, life, right? Family, right? All of those things. What am I going to do there? What am I going to intentionally do there? I'll think about that. I pray about it, and I pray in the mornings, and I use that as a mean to kind of ground me what I need to be focused on today. That helps me personally to do that.
That's so good.
And then just practicing it and
Practice
recognizing
is so good. Yeah.
recognizing that you can't ever have perfection. You'll never get there because every situation is different. And then just being willing to slow down and take life in as it happens. I have a quote on my wall. It's from my wife. It's from Tanya, and it's right there on her wall. And she said it to me one day. She says, "Just because you can go fast doesn't mean you should."
Oh, that's good. That is good.
And so, that's a going below to above the line in that little quote right there. Just because you can go fast, the below piece doesn't mean you should, the above piece. Right. And so, I have that little reminder right there that just kind of, okay, let me just calm down for a minute. And there's times when I'm ready to go full below the line, right? Full line below, and you need to be able to do that, right? There's times when you need to say, hey, I need to go. I got to focus on
execute.
We have to run a business, right?
That's right.
But here's what I know from starting as a young leader, as a Boy Scout and an Eagle Scout, and through my career at NASA, my career at Dynetics, and now Leidos, is it really comes down to its relationships with other people, and developing those relationships with other people is so critical. And you learn that from an early age. If I can tell one early story, and we're at the end, but this kind of solidifies this. When I was in Boy Scouts, I had become a assistant senior patrol leader. I was working my way up, and I loved it. And I was very below the line, as you can imagine, as a probably 13, 14-year-old at the time. And they sent me to a class for senior patrol leaders, and it was a weekend camp. And this weekend camp, you would show up with your patrol box, which had all your equipment. You were expected to have, and you were going to be handed a new group of students that kids that you've never worked with before from another troop. And you were going to lead that patrol for the weekend. You were going to have a series of tasks you had to do, and you'd be graded on those tasks. And what happened? So they said, come loaded with all your food, your patrol box, all that. And so you show up, you meet your new patrol, and now you have to orienteer your way back to the site, and they'll take your patrol box and your tent, all your stuff that I'd prepared. Well, I'd prepared it all. I had it all set up, laid down, all organized, ready to go. Off goes my patrol box. First thing we learned, these new little kids, I didn't understand them. They didn't know me. And right off the bat, we blew the orienteering. We only did about half the course. We were supposed to do the whole course. And the truck picks us up on the side of the road, and so we get a 0 for the first task. And when we show up and to pick up our gear, they said, oh no, those that got here first got to pick from the other people's patrol boxes and tents, and you get whatever's left over. And we literally got these broken down tents, broken down patrol box, limited food, and mine had gone to somebody else. I was like, what? And so at first I had this indignant attitude about it, right? How could that happen? Like this was part of the leadership learning they were putting
What
us
a
through.
story.
And I went back to that group of guys and I said, you know what? There was a best patrol. You had all these other activities. We got a 0 on this first one. I said, let's go and be the best we can be. And I dove in and got to know those young men, and we all worked together. And you know what? By the end of that weekend, we won the best patrol.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
I hung that on my wall for the longest time. The ribbon that went with it was a little simple ribbon and a little handwritten out certificate for winning the best patrol, because I realized it's not all about below the line. You got to go above the line. And I got that driven in early. I didn't even understand what all that meant at the time, at 14 years of age, right? But that's just that got planted early in life.
That's a powerful story, and where you actually have an experience that validates what you learned
early in life,
what you knew
early in life,
so early in life. And,
yep.
And now you're still practicing as president, leading 4,000 people. One more question. We could talk all day, and you're amazing. We haven't even scratched the surface of your accomplishments and leadership and things that you've done. But this is so rich, and your story is so chock full of takeaways for us. So thank you for that. But here's my question for you. What do you think about it?
All right.
So when it's all said and done, and you look back over your life, and you see all these things that you've done, if you could say, this is what I would want my legacy to be, this is what I want to be remembered for, what is it?
I want to be remembered as somebody that followed Christ's example, lived a Christ-like life, showed the fruit of the Spirit in all that he did, and then when he failed, he corrected himself and moved on and showed that example to others. So if I could be seen someday as I lived according to the way Christ and the Bible would tell me to live, that's the legacy that I would want to live in both work, home, personal life, everything.
Wow, powerful. And you are doing that, my friend and brother. Thank you for this time. I'm going to give you one more word to say, whatever you'd like to say as we get ready to close. But this has been amazing, and I want to thank you for being with us and sharing so vulnerably your story and your life. I'm going to give you the last word.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. I love being able to talk leadership. I just say that leadership is a journey. It never ends. You never fully succeed. You just got to keep working at it and exploring new things. But remember, in the end, it's the people that allow you to be the leader.
So powerful. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.